Freddie's at basketball practice, so I thought I'd do a live stream for you guys talking about how come the Federal Reserve, or how come everybody hates the Federal Reserve. And I think that people really don't hate the Federal Reserve. I think they just really don't understand what the hell the Federal Reserve is doing or why it is that they do some of the things that they are doing. And then on top of it, there's really a couple of different positions that you can take. You can either take the position in which that you are a saver, or you can take the position that you are a debtor. And now these two positions argue with each other on which one is better. And then, when I think about things, I think about it from like the strong market, free market, capitalistic kind of point of view, and that you rise and fall on your own merits. And therefore, savings and production is really the place that a strong economy is built. Other people look at debt issuance as being a key function to the economy in order to bring good ideas to market and have the ability to do things like stimulus programs and whatever awesomeness that comes from the debt issuance that comes, that comes from the central banking system that we have. But why is it that so many people get upset? Like, why is it that they think like, the Federal Reserve is making a mistake, or they don't know what they're doing, or, even worse, they're an evil organization that just wants you to fail, or they want to take everything that you ever owned. I'm sorry, guys, my camera just slowly sinks ever so slowly here. I'm trying to get it to stay right there. So really, when I think about like some of the things that the Federal Reserve has said, like, they're going for a 2% inflation, but yet when I read up on what that means, they're looking for a 2% average inflation rate over time, and that monetary policy is seeking to achieve an inflation rate that is moderately above 2%, which means like, what? Like, what does that really mean? I mean, do you have a mathematical formula for it? Nope. Even Jerome Powell says there's no mathematical formula for figuring out average inflation. So it can leave people guessing on what it is that the Federal Reserve is really trying to achieve, since, really the inflation goal isn't really a goal if you don't have an actual target, if it's moderately above 2% somewhere. So are they achieving their goal or are they not achieving the goal? Since really they said the goal for inflation is a 2% over the long run. Now, how long of a run is this? I mean, none of this stuff makes a lot of sense. So it does make a lot of sense when people get upset with the Federal Reserve when it comes, to the inflationary scenario, since they don't clearly define what inflation is or how it is that they are achieving a goal that doesn't really have a mathematical formula for figuring out what that goal would be. I can see where the people would be pretty upset with the Federal Reserve if this is the way that they are talking about inflation. And then on top of it, they say that they want to get monetary policy to a more neutral stance. Now, this is another good one, a more neutral stance. And again, people kind of think about this maybe at the 2% target. Like if the Federal Reserve was at 2% and they had achieved this certain level, then all of a sudden that's neutral. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people might look at it as. But neutral is when the monetary policy is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. It's like neutral. And I can't think of a time in history in which that we have ever had an economy that was like neutral. I mean, it might have been neutral for a moment, but never have we ever really seen an economy that was like neutral for any kind of length of time to say, hey, we're in a neutral economy. Doesn't this feel great? Now, I've never seen that or heard of it or even know what that would look like. But we're either above neutral or below neutral, which means you're either restrictive or you're accommodating. And so again, when it comes to the people who are looking for the Federal Reserve to conduct themselves in the most appropriate fashion, generally you're going to be thinking of one of these two sides. You're either going to be thinking, okay, well, they need to be accommodating or they need to be restrictive. And of course, like if you're in the inflation camp, then you're thinking, okay, they need to be restrictive. But if you're in the recession camp, then they need to be accommodating. And so again, people will get very upset with the Federal Reserve inside of where is neutral and how do you achieve neutral and what would neutral even look like if you've never actually been at neutral. And then on top of this neutral interest rate, it's not observable. Like you don't know exactly where neutral is. you know that you might be somewhere above neutral, and you might be aware of the fact that you're below neutral. But if you don't know exactly where neutral is, then how do you know if you have actually achieved neutral? You see where I'm kind of getting at? Like maybe over time you would be like, oh man, remember back there about 6, 7 months ago, we were neutral, right? But now, unfortunately, we're now in an accommodating policy because we went too far. Or maybe it was just like, well, no, we've been restrictive for a long time and we still haven't felt where neutral is. Like we keep observing it over the past, and we look back there and it was like, nope, we're still above neutral, haven't achieved it yet. But since neutral can move, how do you know just not standing still and finding an inflationary scenario hitting the economy would move neutral into the current position that you're at? Like, you don't have to find neutral, neutral will find you. Like, this is really something that could happen within the economy and with monetary policy. But yet, nobody really discuss any of this stuff. Like, they're not going to come out and say, okay, well, we may find that an inflationary scenario coming from the threats, from the credible threats of tariffs and global trade wars happening out there, that we find an inflationary scenario starts to rise the neutral interest rate, and we realize, man, we don't need to be in any kind of hurry to cut rates. And I think to myself, well, man, isn't this kind of painting the picture right now that's going on? So when I think about what it is that people hate the Federal Reserve over, they hate the Federal Reserve because they just don't know what the Federal Reserve is doing, because the Federal Reserve hasn't well communicated that understanding to the people, that they don't go for an average, or that they don't go for a 2% target, but go for a 2% over time, which means that monetary policy at times would seek to achieve inflation that is moderately above 2% with no mathematical formula for figuring it out. And because nobody knows that, they have to think that the Federal Reserve is going for a 2% target. No wonder why the people get pissed about it. All right, let's see what you guys are talking about. Let's cruise it up. We got 55 people watching with 14 likes. Thank you guys for joining in. Terrible, terrible title tonight. Yui, what up, buddy? Great evening, everyone. Good evening, all-nighter. All right, thanks, Neil. Hey, Richard, good evening. Smart peeps. Thanks for being here. We got, hey, Hyder. Hey, CH6. All right. Hey, BuzzTune. 89 seconds late. Uh-oh. I'm sure you caught up pretty quick. Right on time, Fanta. Anyone watching the fight? Yeah, anybody watching the fight? I was supposed to watch it tonight, but I ended up following through. All right. If the economy is fine, why do they need to lower the rates? I don't think the economy is fine. Like, it might be fine for some people, but what is the economy? The economy is you and me acting in a way that is individual, and as a whole, we create this economy. But the economy, like, who knows? Like, maybe your economy is fine. Like, my economy, like, is okay. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's everything is just like awesome and I'm killing it and making like, $1 million a year or something. So, I mean, that part of it isn't that great, but I'm able to pay my bills, and, I have a job, although I can't imagine it continuing on with as slow as things are if things don't change. But, I look at like what it is that the economy is, and that's your own personal perspective on it, really. It's just like, what is a good or bad economy other than the economy that you have built, the one that where you stand. Are you heavily in debt, or are you been saving? I mean, these are two really different positions for a lot of people. And so when I hear like, well, it's a bad economy, and I was just like, well, that's kind of relative. It might be bad for a lot of people. There might be a difficult in layoffs. It might be, difficulty in getting, being able to find apartments and stuff like that. And people, yeah, that's the stuff we're talking about. But, really, this is the same issue that has taken place throughout history, right? Like, I think back to like that Roman tablet. A lot of guys, a lot of you guys remember me talking about that Roman tablet from the documentary, where they find this tablet, right? This old etched, carved into this tablet, this guy's daily routine, or the issues that he was facing. and he had three major concerns that he had scribed into this tablet, and it was, how do I get my, or what was it? Yeah, how do I get my next meal? How do I pay the, or I'm sorry, how do I get my next meal? What happens if I get sick? And how do I pay the rent? And this is really like the exact same problems that people face today. It was the same problems they faced thousands of years ago, and it'll probably be the same thing that they will face thousands of years from now, is that will always be a concern. How do I get my next meal? What happens if I get sick? And how do I pay the rent? So these things will never change. And as far as a good or bad economy, I believe that those things will exist in any kind of an economy. I heard somebody say, like, in the comments section, they said something about, like, too bad that in this day and age there's just no way that you can make it, and he lists off all this stuff and how bad it really is out there. And I thought to myself, yeah, especially if that's the idea that you have about what's going on. If you have this belief that the world is absolutely trash and that the economy is trashed and that there is no hope and there is no way of getting around it, then why would you try? You simply wouldn't try. You wouldn't try to start a business. You wouldn't try to do, anything out there. You would just, wait for the inevitable collapse and then hope that your silver holdings was, enough. All right, let's cruise down here to the bottom real quick. All right, there we go. My economy is fine, but it's not great for many people I know. Yeah, and again, like, I think that a lot has to do, even with, like, the video that we had done earlier today. I think a lot of it has to do with, the condition that you put yourself in. I mean, did you go off and buy a fancy car? Did you go off and, collect a bunch of credit card debt? Did you, make some really bad financial decisions that now leads you to the position that you're in today? I mean, I think about it. I don't have any student loan debt, right? I didn't go and get a degree in anything. I didn't, throw a bunch of money into business. I didn't do anything like that. And trying to figure out how it is that I was going to, like, do anything in this life at 40 years old with no education, no business, no background, no nothing going on. I tell you, it was like, it was a very scary position to be in. But I realized that it wasn't so much about, like, not having any of that stuff. It was the fact that I was not moving in a direction in which that I knew that would be helpful and beneficial to other people. Like, not only just at my day job, but just in life in general. Like, just to get out there and be useful, be productive, chase that excellence. Like, once you start moving into excellence and forget about the pleasurable part of things, because pleasurable experiences come from just chasing excellence, most of the time what you're going to end up finding is that as you start moving in that position, opportunities start coming to you from places that you never anticipated, and you start getting a life in which that is way different than you had ever anticipated, like, any hope for, and this is really what ends up happening. And so it's not like believing that everybody has, like, an opportunity or whatever in this world, which I really do believe. It's just knowing in the fact that you do, right? You can chase the excellence and not have to stress about, oh man, the new world order is coming to get me. My boss doesn't pay me enough. I'm in a toxic relationship, all this other stuff. All those things you can change, every bit of it. And, off you go. All right. Did anyone see Gammon at the gold mines today? No. That must have been cool. Any questions out there? I came out to hang out with you guys because Freddie's at basketball. And I wasn't sure. I just thought to myself, I see all these articles of, like, so many different, like, Fed officials coming out and all this different communication and all these different people talking about, like, how it is that the Federal Reserve should behave and could behave, and, or how they're behaving badly and stuff. And I really do think, like, how many people actually understand what the Federal Reserve is trying to do? I don't really think it's all about the economy. More people are single and getting married later in life. And the birth replacement rate is well down, mixed with inflation, and it's guaranteed a situation. Yeah, what you're actually describing is something that Cantillon describes in his essay. It very much so. Like when you raise your standard of living, all this stuff starts to happen, like what you're describing right there in your video or in your comment here in the video. And that, once you raise your standard of living, things start to change in society. Like pretty soon, like getting having kids and living that sort of life becomes very difficult in a sense that it starts to deteriorate your standard of living. And because the same sense, when you start to think about the way it deteriorates your standard of living, you're generally not going to behave or do things that would end up leading in that direction. And so even when it comes to like relationships, people are staying single more often. Women are getting degrees at a rate that is faster than men, right? And now, if you are of the understanding of how like hypergamy works, right? Generally speaking, and very deep down inside, it is very difficult for women to be the breadwinner, the dominating one inside of a relationship because that's not the natural position in which that they want to be. Not saying that they can't do it, not saying that they're not happy, and not saying anything like that. All I'm saying is like it makes it pretty simple to understand how it is that couples don't get together and have these lasting relationships if the feminine is being in a dominant masculine position. It's just like, and this generally doesn't work out. Now, there are plenty of relationships that do, and I'm not saying that they don't, and people find their happiness in whatever it is that they are doing. But if you have two particular energies, a masculine energy and a feminine energy, and you put these two together, generally you're probably going to end up with kids, right? And so, it's just the way it ends up going down. So this is really where I think a lot of it ends up being lost, is in the simple fact that women don't need men for anything because they can provide everything that they needed for themselves. And so when that's the case, then you have to have an absolute excellent, totally excelling masculine man in order to be attractive to somebody who is already feeling that they have everything that they need and that they don't need a man. And now the only way that they're actually truly satisfied is that they can get somebody who is absolutely beyond masculine to put them in the feminine position, right? That's the reason why we have such issues today. See, it used to be really easy when men went out there and worked hard and busted their ass and came home and was the breadwinner. Women loved them for it, right? It was just like it was super, super like aligning. That's just the way it went down. And now it's just like the society isn't built that way because we just simply have dove into a luxurious life in which that everybody can now have a higher standard of living with all the education and all the business and all the positions and everything else, which is, I mean, it's just the way it is. I'm not like trying to say it's good or bad or ugly. It's just the way it is. And so, now that it exists, there's no like reversing that. It's not anybody's fault. It's not anything like that at all, right? It just happens to be the way it is. And it's unfortunate for a lot of people, especially those who want to start that family, who want to see that sort of like society out there, that old school, like, little house on the prairie kind of idea, not maybe saying like the old primitive ways, but maybe just the way like, family formations and structures and society was, you know, kind of held together in that way. It's like I don't it's gone, right? That's like, that's out the window. And the people who are able to acquire the things that they need in order to put those things together, it's very difficult. I mean, I know I'm one of them, right? I mean, like my wife and I have been together for 30 years, right? I mean, since we were 18 years old, we have a couple of kids, we have average jobs. I'm doing, side hustle here and YouTube and whatever it is I can out there to make ends meet, and it's expensive as hell and it is hard. Right. So yeah, it's no wonder why people who don't need to do this in order to, because like I mean, you can't really do it on your own, right? You need to partner up in order to do something like this. And if you don't need to partner up because you have everything you could ever want, or it's not even in your desires or favor or benefit to do it, then yeah, it's not going to happen. Hard to succeed alone if she uses feelings, emotions rather than logic to make decisions, but life is a gamble, no guarantees. Well, and I think that's really where it's finding. I don't know why I'm getting into this. This is not like this is not a topic that I know anything about. But in my opinion, it's a matter of finding somebody on the other side of your partnership there who is very much in line with you. Like that's probably one of the things that took my wife and I forever because there was like we went through a lot of crap. Like guys, we like I'm telling you, when my wife and I talk to couples out there who break up or have divorces or whatever's going on, and we listen to their stories and listen to like what it is that they complaining about their issues and stuff like that, and then Sarah and I go back and we talk about it, and it was just like holy crap, we went through way worse than what those people are talking about. Like they are giving up way early comparatively to what we have gone through, because we went through worse than that, and they're giving up and we didn't give up, right? Like there was times in which that I don't even understand why it is that we were sticking it out together like we really shouldn't have, but for whatever reasons we did. And here we are today and we look back on it and it was just like, yeah, it was bad, but man, if we didn't go through that, we wouldn't have been able to understand each other to the levels that we do now, right? And since most people don't go through it, they'll never understand each other to the levels that like my wife and I do. Like we communicate without words all the time. Like we don't need to. We just like we know what each other thinking. And so having that sort of partnership in somebody is very difficult. It's time, it's tested, it's like, punishment, there's rewards, it's all kinds of stuff that you end up having to go through. And it's not something you're going to find in somebody who's just like, oh, hey, no, we've known each other for 18 months and we're really connected. We really know each other. And it was just like 18 months. Huh? You guys went through a lot in 18 months, did you? You know, there's no way. Like I even think about it, it's like the last 18 months I've been with my wife, I've thought, man, like there's so much I've learned about her just in the last 18 months. So I can't imagine that somebody is saying, "Oh no, I learned everything I know about this person in 18 months." That's like I don't think that's possible. There's no way, right? I mean, there's absolutely no way. And so like without that sort of partnership, it's very difficult. Like I mean, the stars may align and you find that person, like that perfect person just right away, and it's just like you guys just carry it on and just did awesome. I mean, I guess that's possible. Like I don't know anybody who is really like that, but I know people who are kind of close to that, but they still have their issues and everybody does. So yeah. Simon no longer has his vehicle. I no longer have the Corolla. I sold the Corolla. I sold the Corolla for $500, and the girl who got it is super stoked. She's happy. She named it Ruby, cleaned it all up, got it running good, got it tuned up, got some of the lights replaced. I think got all the spiders out of the mirrors, and she's super happy. Windows haven't fogged yet. He's still good. Yui driving a Benz? Oh, no way. This is my wife's Ford Escape. All right. You're fired, Gary Gensler. All right. I got glazed over. Simon lost his car again. I feel that you are in a tough place, Simon. I'm not in a tough place, Benny. I'm good. I, I, I mean, I'm all right. I mean, Uh, Ruby. What kind of an economic name? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it was a maroon colored car, so yeah, she named it Ruby. Awesome, man. Cheers for hooking the buyer up with a good deal. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way I feel about it is just like when I heard the story about the car when I got it, it was like the guy, he really didn't even need a vehicle and he just used it for his runner and like would lend it to his friends or, his family, his like his nephew or something like that, and like the car was like just kind of handed around and just kind of was used in a pinch, like when people were like needed a vehicle, there it was. Or if he said he would just use it to run to Portland because it was just like it's just such a just a good gas mileage and everything. And So when he sold it to me, it was like, man, I'm glad. He's like, here, man, $500. He goes, it's not much of a car, but you can have it for 500. Runs great. Hope you enjoy it. Whatever. And then you guys saw it. Like, I mean, I did so many videos. It's like, I don't know, like you guys saw the day, like I have a video of the day that I got it. Like how to buy a $500 car is, I think it was the title of the video. And that was essentially the day I got the car, and I made tons and tons of videos inside of that car. And people made fun of it, the saggy headliner, everything about it. And I think to myself, man, that vehicle got me back and forth to work. It made a great studio for the YouTube channel. It was famous. It was everything I could ever ask for out of a vehicle, like, the performance wise and everything. And at the end of it, I'm thinking, man, how could this thing like really carry on? And to be able to give it to a young lady who's starting off in life, 17 years old, trying to get back and forth to school and work and everything else she's got going on, and to be super stoked. Like she was happy to get it. I mean, a $500 car, nowadays you just don't find those, especially a good running $500 car. It doesn't look great, but it runs great. And, to have something that is reliable, going to get her around, and for $500, she was absolutely stoked. And, that's what I wanted for that car. I mean, it has 165,000 miles on it. I bet you she could drive it at least another 100,000 miles. And, if she carries it on for another 10 years, who knows what it is that that car can do for her as far as being able to give her a position to save or invest or, maybe move on to other places of whatever she's trying to do. And that's the story that I wanted for that car. Especially considering how many people watch what, I did making all the videos in it and stuff. Uh, that is a part of history. Surprised you gave it away. I didn't give it away. I sold it. I wouldn't give nothing away. I sold it, right? Should have charged her 50% interest loan. Prepare for life. Yeah. God, her mom would have killed me. All right. If people are not buying new houses, where are the futures for lumber? Yeah. So did you guys? Okay. So lumber futures closed today. I didn't do a video. I probably should have done a lumber video. Lumber futures closed today. I think they closed, what was it, 570 or something. But not September. What am I trying to say? The January contract is up over 600 per thousand. And it seems to me that it is getting into a very tight spot in which that you're going to start seeing lumber futures rising on a continuous basis. I mean, they've already risen, quite a bit. There was a flash crash that took place earlier today. There was like a 45 per thousand move, which I think was just like, I think it was with 3 contracts or something involved. I don't know much about that. I mean, I'm not like a broker or insider or anything like that, but I don't think that that was like any kind of reality to the situation. Um, being in the mid to high 500s, I think is still incredibly low for the mills, and that moving up into the 600 per thousand is probably where they're going to start feeling a lot more comfortable about being into the production phase where they're actually trying to ramp up production. Now, in order to get to 600 per thousand and be sustainable there, we actually have to have some continuous demand. And right now, demand, I believe, going into the wintertime is probably not going to be all that hot and heavy, considering like, some of the things that we were saying just recently out of like the new completions and the amount of new inventory coming from the new completions. That right there, I believe, is at some point going to churn, and you're going to see that the new completions are going to start falling, and then the new starts are going to rise. At that moment, wherever it is, how far out in the future, I think it's going to be the pivotal moment for lumber, and you're going to really start seeing it taking off after that. But until then, we're going into a slow time in the season and stuff, so there may not be a whole lot of activity happening within it. But I think that video that we did the other day with the housing market showing the completions versus the starts and how there is a major disconnect. Like these two are starting to separate from each other, which is not typical. Usually the housing completions would follow the housing starts fairly closely. Like, as the housing starts would rise, the completions would rise shortly after that. And they would generally work together. And if you put the charts if you overlap the charts, that's what you would see for the most part. Like you can find little tiny discrepancies in there, but for the most part, these two work together until COVID. And then after COVID, there was a huge drop in the amount of starts and completions, really, but it was a huge drop in the amount of starts. And then the amount of starts that took off right after that was just overwhelming. I mean, it was just like this huge spike. But things were in shortages. So it's just like if you're in shortage, it's going to make it difficult to find labor, difficult to find lumber, difficult to find, everything you need to in order to get this house completed. It makes a lot of sense that as this shortages were kicking in, the lag time from the time you start a house to the time that you actually complete one starts to expand itself out there a little ways. So here you had this huge rise in starts and this drop in completions, and then now you're finding the opposite where there's a rise in completions and a drop in starts. So once the completions peak, you're going to start seeing those things coming down. I would assume at the same time you're probably going to start seeing a rise in starts, and at that point right there, bang, that's when you're going to start seeing lumber move again, or at least moving up in a fashion. 165,000 is just breaking in for a Corolla. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it looks like it was rode hard, but the vehicle itself ran great. Uh, let's cruise down here. Benny's on it tonight. All right, Hyder is the man. You must be new here, Lucas. Hey, Cody. All right, the Uneducated Economist is live. Right on, Cody. Good to see you up in here, bud. Donald, quick repo auction sounds like they're not following procedure. All right. M Rider 777, do you think the owner of houses have changed now? It's more corporate than regular people. I mean, I hear a lot of stories about that, and I mean, I kind of read up on it as well, but I mean, me personally, from the things that I experience where I'm at, I don't see that right now. Again, like my little tiny insignificant little spot in the world up here is not a good way of like generally speaking of what's going on out there in the world. But I just have to kind of think about like, okay, so let's just kind of assume for a second that it is these corporations that are loading up on all these houses and the regular average person doesn't have access to these houses because the corporations are buying them up. Okay, let's do that. Let's kind of understand it in that fashion. Okay, well, when I think back to the Cantillon essay and I think about some of the things that he was talking about, this almost makes a lot of sense, right? The concentration of property really goes into the hands of just a few. And this is a time that you're experiencing this. And I would assume that as time goes on, if there is a continuation of new money that pours into the system, we're going to have an ever increasing amounts of concentration of property ownership into the hands of a few. Because you really think about it, like, think about back in the day where the concentration of wealth wasn't so significant yet. Like before, like you had all this pouring in of new money and we were producer savers. Like the idea of being able to buy property or find property or get property was not something that was unheard of. Like it was something that everybody could kind of do. But now as the new money pours in and we have the separation of wealth taking place and the inequality that comes from the new money coming in and the exporting of domestic manufacturing and the importing of foreign production, this is really how the evidence looks. It's like the concentration of wealth hands goes into the hands of a few, and corporations are already a hands of a few. So if these people get together, have a business, and then that business goes out there and starts concentrating the properties into their few hands, then that's essentially the same thing as just an individual person doing it, but these guys do it on a grand scale. So this is like, again, like the property ownership. Each American owes 100,000 in public debt. The child born yesterday and the old man who passes on next week. Everybody's in 100K in debt. U.S. debt climbs to new all-time high of 36 trillion. How will the U.S. be able to pay this off? They won't. They simply won't. Like that's not like I don't know. Like people ask all the time. Like that's a pretty common question that people ask. Is like, how are they going to pay this off? You're not. They're not. You're not going to pay it off. There's no paying it off. In fact, there's really only one direction it can go, and that is ever increasing amounts of more debt, right? Because the world demands it. The world demands this debt. Like they demand it in a way that says if we don't have it, then we can't do what it is that we need to do for business. And if they can't do what they need to do for business, then they start to suffer. They start to suffer in pain and misery and hunger and all the other stuff that comes from it. And really, it's not anything that anybody can fix. Like the amount of dollar denominated debt that exists out there is very difficult to service if you cannot find the dollars. Like people look at the dollar index right now, and you would find that it is like at one of the highest points that it's ever been. Right? Like most of it's, if you take the dollar index back to like the early 80s or whatever, you're going to find most of the time it was far below where it is today. And now this is comparing to a basket of world currencies out there. And so when you think about like how much the dollar is in demand due to the fact that people have written debts that are due in dollars. Like we reported on this the other day, China is issuing out like $40 billion in US dollar denominated debt. That is very difficult for them to have to service if they're trying to get out of the dollar. How do they get the dollars? They need to sell stuff in dollars or they need to take out more debts in dollars. And now, how do you get these dollars out there to the world so that people who are in demand of them don't cause the dollar index to continue to rise so high that you have no more exports because people can't afford to buy your stuff anymore? Right? This is like one of the problems that we're facing here in the United States. And to me, when I think about like the inflation, dollar's gonna die, all this other stuff, and I'm like, I don't think so, right? I mean, inflationary scenario probably, but the dollar going to die? No, not even close, right? Like I mean, it's going to die at some point, but not in the near future. I mean, the near future has a lot of dollar dominance going on with it, and it's going to destroy people before it gets destroyed. Like I believe that a strong dollar will come and destroy nations out there before the dollar gets destroyed. That I truly believe that. Like it will come and just wipe out nations, it'll wipe out corporations and people and all kinds of things before it fails. Right? And when it does, is people are not going to understand it. They're going to be like, what in the hell is happening here? A strong dollar is coming and it's wiping out everybody and it's going to kill them all. And they don't even understand why it's happening. Yeah. All right. Nate B, $3. The illegals were allowed in to dilute the debt. Yeah. I mean, again, like there's a lot of conspiracies, a lot of ideas on what's going on there as well. Um, what do we do? We take it back in history. What did Cantillon say about it? He says that a nation with an abundance of labor is deemed rich. You ever think about that? Like, if you have an abundance of labor, you're actually a wealthy nation. A nation's wealth is determined by how much labor it has. Just kind of think about that for a minute. All right, the fact everyone and their mother thinks it's some big revelation to consistently repeat, you'll own nothing and be happy, goes to show it's a distraction. It's so surface level. I agree, Benny. And here's the funny thing about that. Like people say, oh, you're going to own nothing and be happy. And I'm like, I already don't own anything. Like that's not scary to me. I mean, it would be kind of a bummer to lose the house, right? Because it's like, okay, so I've put 3 years into the house, and it would be like to not have that or anything from it. That would kind of suck, right? I mean, that would be a bummer. But if you were to take all my material possessions from me, I would be like, okay, all right, man, you got a bunch of shit, didn't you? It's just like, I mean, I don't have that much stuff to take. Even if you were to take it, it isn't worth much. I mean, maybe the tools, the tools, and they're old tools. They're not even that great. So like they are coming to take everything you own, and you're gonna own nothing and be happy. Has very little concern for me. I have no concern over that. That is not. I don't even. I don't even think about stuff like that. That is like so far from my mind. When a new form of currency is created by the US government, okay, so this is a huge what if, right? They will push the dollar as close to zero as they can. Then the old debt is swallowed by the new currency. The new currency could be platinum. Nah, it doesn't work like that. Because, like, what you're trying to assume is that Gresham's law wouldn't exist, right? You can't have two currencies. You can't have two currencies, especially competing currencies. They won't work like that. It never will. It will always have one of them being hoarded while the other one will be put into use. I mean, you know, even if you were to use legal tender laws, you would end up with black market issues from it. So, really, the only way the dollar is going to be removed without complete failure is to trade one to one in a symbiotic relationship with another currency. Now, I believe that's going to be stable coins. Like stable coins going into the future, I believe is going to be the transition out of the dollar and into the new form of whatever it is that's going to come, whether it's backed by US treasuries or backed by debt of another nation, whether it's backed by, who knows, maybe cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or gold or something like that. I doubt it, right? I doubt it can be moved into something like that. But once you have transitioned into the new currency, you can back it with whatever you want. But until that happens, it's going to have to trade one to one with the dollar and share some sort of like equal relationship, meaning like, this many dollars will get you this many whatever currencies, and that's fixed and it doesn't change, and no matter what happens, it doesn't deviate from this exchange value. If that's the case, then yes, you could introduce a new currency into the system so long as maintaining this equal partnership with the dollar itself, because the dollar is the world reserve currency. But the moment that it becomes better or worse than the dollar itself, it will no longer work, right? And now you really can't introduce a good currency in, because the moment that it turns good, it'll get hoarded away. And you're not going to introduce a bad currency because nobody would use it. So there is no way of really having a currency coming in and competing against the dollar. It will trade one to one. It has to. It's the only way it'll work, right? Otherwise, it just simply wouldn't work. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Let's cruise it up. Simon, do you love leverage outside of a loan for a primary residence? How much leverage would you be willing to take on? Would you load up 70%? Seems like it's the only way to separate and get freaky. Well, I think there's all kinds of ways to get freaky, bro. I don't think you really need to leverage up for that. You can just get freaky all on your own, right? um, No, I don't leverage up because I don't really like I don't know what it is that I would like expect to do with that. Like to me, like if you're gonna leverage, then leverage into a business or something like that. Something in I guess really if you were to borrow money and then buy something that moves up in value, or has some sort of return on it that is business like, then I guess that would be one thing. But, to me, like borrowing money to invest into something that you can advance your skills into so that you can use that to make more money in the future. I mean, that's kind of more of the way I think. I mean, I'm not one to leverage into like buying like stocks or something of that nature. I just don't work like that. Yeah. And I don't really like I mean, I guess I kind of thought like, you could on a very simple like scale, like use a credit card to buy material to build, something that you can sell, like picnic tables or planter boxes or something, some kind of outdoor furniture kind of thing. Uh, The Tyson Paul fight crashed Netflix. Is that what happened? Is that why everybody's? That's why nobody's on tonight, huh? Everybody's watching the Paul fight, Paul Tyson fight. Uh, Simon, cash flow. Yeah, I mean that's really what it is. I mean, if you were to borrow money and then go buy cash flowing assets, I mean, I guess as to what level that you're willing to do something like that. But, Simon, what's your opinion on no income tax? How will that change the economy? Here's the thing about taxes. Like they could here's a funny thing. They could tax 100% of our income and 100% of corporate profits, and it still would not be enough to cover the unfunded liabilities. Right? So this like taxing is a pointless thing to begin with. Now, there is a reason why they do it. It's because taxing you is the only way they can get your time. Because that's really what it is they're taking your time from you. If you have to pay taxes, you have to pay your past. You have to pay your time from your past. And that's nothing you can get back. So when you really think about it in this fashion, that's what they're ultimately doing. Is they're taking your time from you. Otherwise, it doesn't matter because it's all non-existent. If they can just print up as much money as they want, and like none of that, like it's all just numbers on a digital screen anyway. But the reality of your time and the loss of it by having to pay taxes, that's real. And so when you think about it in this fashion, it's the only way they can get your time. Uh, that's what I guessed was Simon, and he surprised me. Thanks for answering, Hyder. Always love the appreciate the insight. Oh, wise one. What are you guys talking about? Using leverage? Do you believe the economy is stifled because of cash flow going to other countries? Well, I I don't know. Like people like I don't think like the economy is in a position in which that you can't succeed. Like that's like I mean, I understand for a lot of people, they look at it and say, well, it should be like this in order for it to be easier to succeed, or the things that I know it could succeed in this way if things were different. But when I look at things, I'm thinking, well, there's plenty of people out there who are kicking ass right now. How are they doing it? Like that's what I think is just like I'm not doing it. So what are people doing that is doing it? Because that'd be more in the direction that I need to move. Not saying, hey, you guys are screwing this up and that's why it's not working. Go and find the things that are working out there, right? Because there's plenty of things that are working. There are people out there who are kicking it and doing it right now. All right. I think things will get better for a few years at least. Some people are hooked up. Some people are hooked up, all right? Some people are hooked up. And other people are finding ways to meet that, to get that. And when I think about it, it was like it's not easy to know what it is that you're supposed to do once you have. Like even I myself, it was just like I got this YouTube channel and it became, fairly popular, got me noticed with a pretty big group of people, and I have no idea. It was just like they're like, boom, here, get up on stage, go talk, go do the stuff. Now what are you gonna do? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I was just making videos, right? I didn't know what I was supposed to do or what it is that I have going on. And now I'm realizing it was just like, okay, so there's evolution to this, just like everything else is out there. Everybody can have an opportunity to something, right? And so this is really where I think it's like it's hard to say like what it is that you're supposed to do or what it is that you can make the connections with. But like I didn't know, like I had an opportunity to go and hang out and talk shop with all these rich people who make it in real estate and do all kinds of stuff out there, right? And I thought to myself, it was just like, man, is that really the direction that I want to take my life? Is this really where I want to go right now? I mean, I'm raising this family. I'm like trying to be this, the hardworking family man kind of thing. And is that really the direction that I want to take my life right now when I'm trying to do something totally different over here, which is like very quiet and small and, just kind of simple, and it was just like, is there ability to do both of these things at the same time, and this is really where I think like having the opportunity and having met the people that I have does give me that opportunity. Like occasionally I get to step into that world while also maintaining this other world. Other people, all-nighter, I know one day is going to be super popular at whatever it is that he's doing, man. Because whatever he does, it's always amazes me how well he has been able to connect and network and talk with so many different groups of people. Like, you go to like these conventions and like it's amazing. Like everybody knows who All Nighter is. It's like, he's like he's more popular than the people up there speaking. And that's the way he's done his like the way he's done his networking and his connections. All right, man, I can hardly see this. Okay, I have two successful companies. I know all about write-offs. Write-offs versus people standing up are different topics. Yeah. All right. He runs a business called Porky's. All right. He's a good dude. People want to be around good people. Yeah, absolutely. All night or hider wins are possible, but that's not the norm. It's the outlier. I don't know. Like, I think. Oops. Oh, stay up there. This damn phone just wants to slide. It just keeps slowly sliding down. I don't know. I think, like, winning, being in a constant winning position, I don't think is that difficult. Like, I think for a lot of people, they don't see it within themselves. And so, therefore, they can't find it. But if you don't see it any other way, like, if you just don't, like, you're not gonna hit a home run every time you step up to the plate, but you can hit home runs, right? And you can do base hits, and you can, foul the ball off, and that you're gonna smash that ball occasionally, right? But when you step up to the plate, like you step up to the plate with the expectation that you're gonna hit a home run, right? You're not gonna go up there and go like, okay, well, I'm gonna foul it off 3 times, and then I'm gonna go and hit a base hit or something like that. Like, no, right? You step up to the plate with the anticipation that you're going to smash a home run every single time. You know you're not going to, right? But you're going up there with the anticipation that you are. And when you have that sort of attitude towards everything in life, like everything in life, you go up there with the idea that I'm going to smash a home run, then you don't really think about life any other way other than hitting home runs, right? Even though you're not going to do it every time, but that's the way you feel. You just feel like you're going to. You go for the job, you thinking, yeah, I'm going to get the job. Of course I am. There ain't nobody else who's going to get this job but me because I'm the best one for this job. And I know I am because of all the home runs I've hit in my life. And you just kind of have that. Like you don't necessarily have that cocky attitude on the outside, but you have that feeling on the inside, right? And you don't accept anything less. And it was just like, if they are trying to offer me anything less than this, then I won't accept it because that's not the job that I want, right? The job that I want is the one that hits home runs. And, for me, it was like, how do you know when you step up to the plate that you're going to be able to hit home runs? It's because you practice. You've done it. You've been smashing balls. You've been up there going through the trainings, going through batting trainings, and everything that leads up to it. Well, that's the same thing. Like when I went to go get the current job that I have, it was right when the building supply company that I was working for, which was 2 stores in our county, 2 big stores, shut down at the exact same time, right? Both these stores. That left very few places for people who do that kind of work to go to because you're going to another lumber yard, right? That's, kind of like similar work. And so there wasn't that many places to go to. So I knew the store that I wanted to go to work at was going to get a lot of people going to them to say, hey, man, do you need sales? Do you need truck drivers? Do you need whatever? And since I knew that was going to take place, like I wasn't going to be the only one who was going to apply here for this sales job at this other particular lumberyard, the one I work at today. And so I did something that was kind of sneaky, right? It was just like, well, if I'm going to win this game, if I'm going to smash home runs, if I'm going to be going up there, I have to do something that's going to be quite different. And so I started actually doing things that were kind of strategic. I had the vendors dropping my name. So as the vendors go around from store to store to try and sell things, I just told them, hey, just go over there. Don't say anything other than just drop my name. Just like, just bring my name up a topic and just let it go. Don't say anything else. And so I had the vendors like just mentioning my name to this particular other lumber yard out there. And then what I did is I had my favorite customers, I told them, hey, we're shutting down, the store's about ready to close. Do me a favor when you're out there getting your bids, call over to this particular store and ask for me. Right. And then when they say I don't work there or whatever they say, just say, okay, I'm sorry, just go ahead and get your bid. Anyway, but just drop my name. Just like mention it to them, like, in the call, to say, hey, is just drop my name. Is Simon working there? So anyway, I had the vendors doing this and the customers doing this. So a few weeks later, as the store was starting to close down, like we knew it was going to, I go over there to apply, and my name is like already in their head. It's been brought up a few times. They've been talking about me, and then now here I am applying for the job. It was like almost, it was, here you go, man, and just gave it to me. And so it was like no doubt in my mind. Yeah, it was sneaky. Damn right it was sneaky. Of course it was. Of course it was. But how else are you gonna guarantee that you're gonna get the job? Like you're gonna go in there and just be fair? I mean, it could be fair. Like I'm gonna go up there and get in line with everybody else, and it was just like, hey man, I'm Simon. I'm a hardworking dude. I'll show up every day on time and all that like stuff. That ain't gonna get you in. That ain't gonna get you the job. uh, not even I have networked my way into a job like that. Master plan. Yeah, thanks. It was yeah, it worked out pretty well. Like, cause I mean, I was thinking, man, I was like, man, how am I gonna get my name over? Like, cause they already knew who I was. Like, I mean, I'm from a pretty small area, right? I mean, Clatsop County, I think is 30,000 people in it. Astoria has like 10,000 people. It's pretty small. And so, in growing up here, it's just like, you get to know a lot of people, especially now with things like Facebook and stuff like that. There's no hiding from anybody. And so they knew who I was, and I had worked there a long time ago. So it wasn't like I was a stranger. And so yeah, the way I got in like that, it was like it's like nobody else had a chance, you know? Yeah. Sneaky smart. Thanks. Yeah, it worked out really well. All right, most jobs are because you know someone, they knew you before you applied. Yeah, I agree. I really do agree. It's like most of the jobs that I got, I usually got from word of mouth, and it was because I knew somebody who knew somebody, right? You know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And it is, as sad as it is to say, I got most of my work sitting down at the bar, like hanging out at the bar, networking, talking with people. That's usually where I was able to find the connection to get employment. So, like the bar was my place, man. And as much as excuse me, don't like the fact that I ended up drinking a lot of it over there, like a lot of my life, but it was hanging out there and knowing the people and making those connections and stuff. And it's funny because like that same bar doesn't have anybody in it that I know from back then. Like they're all moved on to different places and they're all gone. Like that whole little hub of people that I was associated with, that we all, did our things and lived life and everything. They're all off into other places, new owners, new patrons, new everything. It's not anything the same, except for the bingo game. Bingo game's still the same. Simon, they knew, given your driving record, being a truck driver for the company was out. Your reputation on the 101 and Leif Erikson precedes itself. It's funny because Benny makes fun of me getting speeding tickets and stuff, but I mean, he forgets that I don't drive cars that can go fast enough to get speeding tickets. uh, yeah, David, but that's a high level, high output fail, the best kind to learn from. Uh-oh, where's that one at? Who's that? David. Where's David? Using that same baseball analogy, if you go to the plate thinking you're going to excel, that would presume the pitcher has to fail at his task. Um, well, I mean, what did Holnider say? Yeah, that's a high level, high output fail, the best kind to learn from. Yeah, and I guess that's it too, because you're not going to actually hit the home run. So you are actually anticipating that that pitcher will succeed, right? I mean, you're not going to want to, but if you fail, he succeeds. So your failure is his success. And you know that you're not going to succeed every single time. So yeah, no, I think that's a fair, you're not, I mean, it's not like you're anticipating the pitcher's failure. You know the pitcher's success from your failure will succeed off from you failing, right? I mean, I think that's probably a better way to look at it from that kind of analogy, right? Because you're not anticipating like the pitcher not doing his job. You're more anticipating that you're not going to be able to do your job. Uh, do you think the 1% will shrink as a separation from the rich and the poor gets bigger? Well, I mean, I think the concentration of wealth, so long as new money continues to pour in, which I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, especially if they're able to take things into a digital realm and even go negative or something like that. I don't see how how the new money wouldn't continue to pour in. And if you have new money that continues to pour in, then you will have continuous separation between the rich and the poor. It, whether or not it's concentrated into like, it goes from 1% to half a percent to all this other stuff. I think I think that concentration is kind of like an obscure way of really looking at things because like a handful of people can have so much, and what we think is so much they don't really think about is like how in the individual things like they could buy 400,000 Lamborghinis or whatever. I mean, it was just like I don't think they look at it in that fashion, right? I think us down here on the lower end, what we look at is the conveniences. Like, how convenient is our life? Are we able to acquire the things in our life that we want? And I think that's really where, like, people look at it as just like, man, they got this concentration of wealth and look how much they have and how poor we are. Yeah, that's probably going to be the case. But I think really what we should look at is how convenient is our life? How easy is it to acquire the food? How is it to acquire, housing? How easy is it to acquire some of these things? And that's really where, you should end up looking at it because unless they actually turn off the new money, like which they ain't going to do because there ain't they going to do it, right? But unless for some reason there was a complete collapse of the system and there was no new money coming in, then we're going to have the ever increasing amounts of separation that happens. So they're going to like they're already gone left us. Where we're at is understanding like how is it that our life is going to be remain convenient or accessible to the things that we want like healthcare and food and stuff like that. But there is no like if you want this lower society to look better, we have to be producer savers. Like we can't think of them. Like them, they already done got it. They're off and running. They're away from us. But us as individuals, we're the producer savers, and if we could figure out a way that we could produce and save that is outside of their touching, which is only going to happen within like the gold and silver realm, but even inside of that, eventually you will find industrious people who will then start to concentrate that wealth. It will happen every single time. It's there's like very little doubt in my mind. There is no reversal of it. It doesn't go the other way. It's like there's a redistribution of wealth after a collapse, right? And you redistribute the wealth back out there. But even if the people themselves were, like, again, to separate it, there's going to be industrious people in there, and those industrious people are going to be producer savers, which end up concentrating the wealth, every time. It's like, I don't think there's any way of stopping that. So they're basically another species of human. No, I think they're just in a position that isn't like, yeah, okay, fine, they're another species of human. No, I don't know. They're like I don't know how to describe it in any other way than like that they've achieved a level of being that doesn't have, like, when we think about like buying a car, we think about how many hours we have to put into it, right? We think about how we have to sacrifice something else in our life in order to acquire this thing. We even think about like maybe even how it even got there, like, all the truck drivers or something that may have, like, brought it to us. We have this kind of belief. The other side, they don't look at it like that, right? They look at like the car manufacturing plant. Right? That's like more of their like thing of the car. Like the car itself isn't something that they think anything about. Like riding around in the vehicle isn't something that they think, oh man, we got this fancy car here that we drive around in. No, they don't, like, it doesn't, that isn't part of it, right? It's more like all the vehicles at once out on the road. That's what they look at. And so it's a view that is so far beyond what we see, because we look at the individual and they look at it as like this grand overview. Cost of living in Astoria drove those folks out. You said it yourself. The Bay Area and Seattle sludge have moved into your domain, Simon. Yeah, and that is actually kind of true, Benny. Uh, anyway, no, that's kind of true, Benny. Like, the people who are living in those particular areas who no longer wanted that sort of life, sold their expensive homes and came into areas like mine, which were very quiet and peaceful, and, what didn't have all the trendy, fancy stuff that's going on like it does now. And so they basically came in and made it a different area. You can really see the changes that have taken place over the last 20 years or so in Astoria. It's definitely become much more of a hospital district, retirement community, touristy town. Used to be loggers and fishermen. Like that was the main bulk of the town, was logging and fishing and working community. And that's very much different nowadays. It's not the same. All right, root beer and cream soda for me. I love it all later. All right, Cody, playing video games with my friends and so what are we talking about? I don't know. What are we talking about, guys? We were talking about how everybody hates the Federal Reserve because nobody understands what it is that the Federal Reserve is truly trying to do. That was the initial start to the video, but like always, we end up getting into life philosophy stuff. Did anybody catch the fight? I don't know. Does anybody know? Did Mike beat his ass yet? Damn cocky ass YouTubers, they need their asses beat. Alright. Uh, News baseline of wealth are being set all time. 100K isn't what it used to be. These days, 100K is entry level salary. Yeah, and that's what's kind of crazy about it is like, I remember like when I was younger, I mean, not even that long ago, I was just thinking, man, $100,000. If that was like, how can somebody make $100,000 and still be broke? I just don't get it. I mean, I could understand it maybe if they lived like in San Francisco or something like that, where 100K it would be, probably not even enough to live in San Francisco. But anywhere else, it seemed like 100K would just be like, totally easy. Like you'd be able to make it, have anything you want, have the car, have the house, have the, vacations and stuff like that. And then one year I made 100K, and I was just like, shit, that ain't that much money, is it? Like you throw a few things like braces and a couple of other medical things going on in there and a few other taxes, pretty soon it's just like, wow, yeah, 100 grand really isn't that much money, is it? I mean, that's sad, because I mean, there was like, you would think, man, I try hard, eventually get there, and you think it would be worth like, so much more, and then you get there, and it's just like, dang, man, it's not that much, is it? Uh, Purple Cow, what is that? Purple Cow, grape knee high, and vanilla ice cream. Hospital districts can't survive without electricians. Big money. Uh, okay. Do you meditate? Yeah, I meditate. We kind of talked about that in the other video the other day. Yeah, I meditate in a different, like everybody I found meditates differently. Like everybody has their own way and figured out like what it is that they like with their meditations and how they meditate and stuff. And I like to meditate and think about what it is that I'm wanting in my life and how it is that I want my life to look and feel and be like. And I try to do that in the last 20 minutes before I go to sleep and the first 20 minutes of when I wake up. And I try to make it happen within that time period. The whole world system revolves around computers. What would possibly go wrong? Who knows? What time is it? 8:30. Okay, so yeah, Freddie's just about done with his basketball practice. He should be busting out here in just a few minutes. So thank you. This channel is my favorite. Well, thank you, Second to Man. I appreciate it. I get a lot of people who tell me that, that the live streams are a little too much for them. And so I started doing a lot more. I'm going to do more pre-recorded videos. And I think a lot of times, that those shorter videos, like, 10 to 12 minutes, like even that is asking a lot out of somebody's day. I can't imagine, trying to sit through an hour or 3 hours worth of live stream. If you're in the middle of the discussion, like that part I get because now you're in the, you're hanging out, you're talking, you're, joining in on the group. But to watch like a 3 hour live stream, that's a lot to get out of somebody's day. I mean, even 10 minutes seems to be a lot. So I'm going to do a lot more of the pre-recorded videos just because of how short they really are and how people can probably get into them a little bit easier than the live streams. But I love these live streams. I mean, I like getting out here and I love talking about this stuff and breaking it all down and hanging out with you guys and everything. So it's just like I can never stop doing this. Being on the other side of the world, I can't catch a lot of the streams, but I love the ones I do. Well, thank you, Cody, man. We really like having you here too. Uh, See, I like Cody being here because Cody's young. Cody's like, early teenager years, figuring out this economic stuff, really diving into the idea of like owning silver and being into a silver asset purchaser and holding it for protection for purchasing powers and stuff like that. And Cody's really into it. So he's really understanding this stuff at a very young age. And, when I think about like, man, if we could get more kids who could understand this sort of level of economics, like, what we're discussing here, if we could get more kids involved and stuff like that, I don't think we would have a world that exists like the way we do. So also, I have to say, like, if Cody's the only one of his friends who is diving into this stuff, you think about how far he's advancing his understanding of economics before his buddies are going to figure it out. I mean, it's like amazing, like what a leap start to understanding life and finances. So that's why I like seeing him here. How much does it require to raise a child? 100,000 sounds cheap. Hey, hey, Matthew, you coming with us, bud? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know your mom didn't tell you. Alrighty, guys. I guess we're gonna call it quits here. You want to say goodnight to everybody? Can you hand me one of those waters?
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you.
Nah.
Yeah. A little wore out. Matthew, you want to say goodnight?
No.
No? All right. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.